Welcome back to the Season 1 finale of Started at the Bottom. In this video, we will take a look at all the winners of each league and cup competition, as well as also having a look back at our own season review. We will also look ahead to the next season and see if there's any positions that we feel we may need to improve on for our first season in the National League. We're going to start by taking a look at the competition that we aim to get to, the Champions League. This is how the league phase finished. As you can see in the playoffs, there's some huge teams in there. Bayern Munich, PSG, Inter Milan, Barcelona, Juventus. The top 8, a couple of surprise entries. Atletico Bilbao, Atalanta. And right at the top, Liverpool, 8 wins from 8, progressing as the number 1. Not many shocks in the playoff round. Napoli defeating Barcelona 3-2 on aggregate. A great result for them. And also this game here, Spurs 3-1 up from the first leg, thinking the job's done and getting beat 3-0 at home to Inter Milan, meaning Inter progressed to the next round. Some great matches in the round of 16. Bayern Munich knocking out Liverpool. We've got Newcastle defeating Chelsea. PSG knocking out Man City, and Arsenal knocking out Inter Milan, who knocked out Spurs in the previous round. Once again, some great matches in the quarterfinal stage. Real Madrid knocking out Bayern Munich. Atletico Bilbao beating Napoli on penalties. Newcastle doing the job in the first leg, 2-1 away at PSG. And then unfortunately slip into a 2-0 defeat at home, meaning they were knocked out 3-2 on aggregate. And Atletico Madrid, 3-0 down from the first leg, win 3-0 at Arsenal and knock them out on penalties. What a game. On to the semi-finals, and as you can see, the final will be contested by the 2 Madrid teams, Real and Atletico. Bilbao with a great run in the Champions League, unfortunately failing at the semi-final stage, losing 5-4 on aggregate to Real Madrid. And Atletico Madrid progressing to the final after a 4-2 aggregate victory over PSG. And there you have it, the 2025-26 season Champions League. Real Madrid progress as the winners, winning 2-0 against their rivals Atletico Madrid. Player stats from the Champions League. As you can see, Vini Jr. did win the Golden Boot, scoring 11 goals in 13 appearances. Second place, Kylian Mbappe, again of Real Madrid, 9 goals in 15. And third place went to Marcus Thuram with 8 goals in 11 appearances. Champions League player of the season, unsurprisingly, Kylian Mbappe with an average rating of 8.21 over 15 appearances. Quick look at the Europa League. This is how the league phase ended. Benfica having to settle for a playoff spot. Nottingham Forest, Roma, Aston Villa, Porto, all through to the knockout phase. Onto the playoff round. The only real surprise I can see there is this one here. Benfica leading from the first leg, being eliminated 4-3 on aggregate. Onto the round of 16. And as you can see, both Lille of France and Porto of Portugal knocked out at the round of 16 stage. A great game here. Servette from Switzerland against Nottingham Forest. Forest 4-1 up from the first game, losing the second leg 3-0, meaning the game did go to penalties. And Nottingham Forest progressing to the quarterfinal stage. Another great game by Forest in this round. Unfortunately, this time it was heartache as they're eliminated on penalties by Stuttgart, who will be joined in the semi-finals by Real Betis, Roma and Aston Villa. The final of the Europa League is going to be contested by Roma, who progress on penalties against Aston Villa, and Stuttgart, who progress with a 3-2 victory over Real Betis. The winners of the 2025-26 Europa League, who will qualify for Champions League football next season, is Roma, thanks to a 2-1 victory over Stuttgart in the final. Winner of the Europa League Golden Boot is Evan Ferguson of Roma, scoring 9 goals in 13 appearances. Ollie Watkins took second place with 8 goals in 13. And the third place goes to Martin Satriano of Lyon with 7 goals in 12 games. Europa League Player of the Season goes to Dan Ndoye of Nottingham Forest with a 7.88 rating over 12 appearances. Second place is Borja Sainz of Porto, 7.96 but only over 9 games. And third place, Dodi Lukebakio from Benfica with a 7.93 rating over 8 appearances. Onto the Conference League. As you can see, a couple of teams in the playoffs there, Rangers, Anderlecht, Genk. At the top of the league, Besiktas, Fiorentina and Palace top the group. A couple of early eliminations in the playoff round, FC Midtjylland losing 3-1 aggregate. Rangers also eliminated despite winning the first leg. They go down 4-3 on aggregate after losing the second leg 2-0. And finally, Shakhtar Donetsk eliminated on penalties after a 2-2 aggregate result. Into the round of 16, Fiorentina progressed with a 3-2 victory. Besiktas come from behind to win the second leg 2-0 to progress 3-1 aggregate. Anderlecht eliminated despite a 3-1 second leg win, losing on penalties to Maccabi Haifa. And one of the games of the round, Genk being eliminated 4-3 on aggregate by Crystal Palace. Into the quarterfinals, wins for both Palace and Fiorentina. Shock result for Besiktas, who were eliminated 4-3 on aggregate. Despite finishing third in the league, they are eliminated at the quarterfinal stage. The final of the Conference League contested by Crystal Palace, who progressed 4-0, and Fiorentina, who progress with a 3-1 aggregate victory. And there you have it, the winners of the 2025-26 UEFA Conference League was Fiorentina after an extra time victory 2-1 against Crystal Palace. The winner of the Conference League Golden Boot is Mateta with 10 goals in 8 games. He also won the Player of the Season with an average rating of 7.54 over his 8 appearances. In the Super Cup, it was PSG who came out as winners with a 2-0 victory over Tottenham Hotspur. Moving on to the English Cup competitions, we'll start with the FA Cup. Had we progressed against Norwich in the 4th round, we would have had a home tie against Liverpool, with Liverpool knocking Norwich out and progressing to the quarterfinals. Man City, Arsenal, Brentford, Chelsea, Spurs, all progressing as well. 4 big clubs progressing into the semi-finals. Man City with a 4-0 victory over Sunderland. Liverpool 2-1 at Brentford. Arsenal knocking out Spurs after extra time, 2-1 victory. And finally, Chelsea winning 4-0 at Nottingham Forest. Final of the FA Cup, contested by both Chelsea, who won 1-0 at Arsenal, and Liverpool, who won 5-2 after extra time against Man City. And it is Chelsea who are your FA Cup winners, thanks to a 3-2 victory in the final against Liverpool. Onto the Carabao Cup. Semi-finalists will be Liverpool, who progressed 2-1 against Arsenal. Chelsea knocking out Championship team Blackburn 2-1. Man City defeating Wolves 2-1. And finally, Newcastle knocking out Nottingham Forest 1-0. Finalists of the Carabao Cup, Liverpool progressing with a 3-2 aggregate victory over Manchester City, and Newcastle progressing with a 3-2 aggregate victory over Chelsea. The winners of the Carabao Cup for the 2025-26 season was Liverpool with a 3-2 victory over Newcastle in the final. On to the Virtus Trophy. And as you can see, the winners of this was Liverpool reserves. beating Newcastle reserves in the final. Onto a trophy we were a part of, the FA Trophy. Altrincham progressed with a 4-2 victory over Wealdstone. Sutton progressed with a penalty victory over Southend. Alfreton progressed on penalties against Buxton. And finally, you'll remember, we were eliminated by Scunthorpe on penalties, who joined the rest in the semi-final. Had we have progressed, we would have had an away fixture at Sutton. Sutton advanced into the final after a 1-0 victory over Scunthorpe. They were joined by Alfreton, who won 2-1 at home against Altrincham. The winners of the FA Trophy were Sutton United, thanks to a 1-0 victory in the final against Alfreton. We now move on to the league, starting with the Premier League. And as you can see, it was Liverpool who came away as champions on goal difference, with Manchester City finishing in second. Teams that will drop to the Championship are Bournemouth, Burnley and Wolves. Premier League top goal scorer goes to Nick Woltemade, scoring 18 goals in 34 appearances. Victor Gyökeres, second place, 18 goals a game, but played a game more, 35 appearances. And third place goes to Mo Salah, who scored 17 in just 27 appearances. Onto the Championship, and the winners of the league were Norwich, who knocked us out of the FA Cup. Also promoted with them were Sheffield United, and Leicester went up through the playoffs. Teams relegated to League One are Preston, Portsmouth and Sheffield Wednesday. On to League One, and it was Bolton who were promoted as champions. Luton also got the automatic promotion spot, and Cardiff went up via the playoffs. The teams that will drop to League Two will be Bradford, Burton, Wimbledon and Northampton, who were all relegated. On to League Two, and it was Colchester that were promoted to League One as champions. They'll be joined by MK Dons, Shrewsbury, and finally Chesterfield went up via the playoffs. The two teams that were relegated and who will join us in the National League next season were Barrow and Cheltenham. Onto the league that will be competing in next season, the National League. As you can see, it was York that got promoted to the Football League as champions. They'll be joined by Forest Green, who were promoted via the playoffs. The teams that were relegated were Hartlepool, Eastleigh, Truro and Brackley. Onto the National League South, and joining us in the National League will be Dorking, who went up as champions, and Worthing, who were promoted via the playoffs. Teams that were relegated were Chesham, Tonbridge, Slough and Hampton and Richmond. And finally, onto the National League North. We were promoted to the National League as champions. We'll be joined in the National League by South Shields, who were promoted via the playoffs. Teams that were relegated were Macclesfield, Chorley, Bedford and Curzon. Looking back at the previous season, it's very safe to say we have had a very successful season. We were predicted to finish bottom of the league and we've ended up being promoted as champions. We did manage to get to the fourth round of the FA Cup, despite the board only wanting us to qualify for the first round. Again, we weren't expected to do much in the FA Trophy. However, we did get to the quarter-final and I was disappointed to be eliminated. However, it gives us something to look for next season and possibly progress further and even win it. We did win Manager of the Season, thanks to winning 69% of our 46 league matches played. We did make a huge profit over the season. Profits at 570,000 for the season, meaning we were hit with a tax bill of 140,000. However, our overall balance is still good, 433,000. And as you can see, the board has also announced that they will be expanding the stadium by an extra 1,000 seats. So overall, a pretty successful season in terms of facilities. We did increase the youth facilities, the training facilities, and we're now expanding the stadium as well. The board have also sealed 4 new sponsorship deals, which are estimated to bring in an extra £65,000 a year, which, as you can see, is a £50,000 increase over the year based on last season. The board have also set the ticket prices for next season, with the average ticket price now being £17 and season ticket prices valued at £288. We have decided to let 3 players go at the end of their contracts, although all 3 of them, especially Tim Berridge, have had a great season. We feel as we've progressed through the leagues, we will need a better quality of player to try and progress even further. So we'd like to thank Tim Berridge, Adam Walker and Anthony Lynn for the service and wish them all the best for the future. The board have also announced a link with Quorn, a team where we can send some of our younger players on loan. We have had a few scholars come through, so we might think about sending them there on loan to get a little bit of experience. So before we take a look at areas of the squad that we might need to improve on, the board have set their expectations from the season. The FA Trophy that we finished in the quarter-final in last season, they expect us to reach the 3rd round as a minimum. The FA Cup, we reached the 4th round last season. They're again just expecting us to reach the 1st round proper. However, again, financially, it'll do us no harm to try and progress as far as possible. And finally, they're just expecting us to attempt to avoid relegation in the National League. However, personally, I'd rather finish much higher up the table, and we will be aiming to try and gain back-to-back promotions. So this is a squad we have for the start of the pre-season. As you can see, we're pretty bare at the moment, thanks to the expiry of the contracts, as well as the loan players we had from last season, including Cove, Perry, Gordon, Stevenson, Kelly, and finally Jones, all returning to their parent clubs. We are going to have to get busy in the transfer market and try and fill some of the gaps in the team before the start of the season. We will just take a quick look through the team and see where it is we will need to improve on. I am very happy with Eddie Breary remaining as the goalkeeper. However, we don't have a backup, so we will need to bring someone in just in case anything happens to Eddie. At right back, I am happy for Dan Meredith to keep playing as the first choice. However, with the expiry of Stevenson's loan, we don't really have a natural right back to cover for him. However, Archie Crowther and Will Kirk, the youngster, can fill in there if necessary, so it's not really a priority to get someone in. But if we do have the wages at the end, we will attempt to bring in a proper right back. We will be looking to bring in a centre-back as a priority. With the expiry of Perry's loan, it now leaves us a little bit short. Archie Crowther and Bailey Berry will likely start until we get someone in, with Deacon and Kirk, the 2 youngsters, providing backup at the moment. However, we do need a bit of experience in that defence. As you can see at left back, we are looking a little bit short again. We do have D'Amico Burton, who played very well last season. However, he did go down injured quite a bit. And the only backup we really have for him is Emmanuel Chander, who is a youngster, and we don't really want to be relying on him too much, just here and there. And with Keenor and Cove both leaving, we will need to bring somebody in just to provide some competition for D'Amico Burton. Moving into the defensive midfield position, and as you can see, Ewan Williams is our only starting defensive midfielder left from last season. Obviously, with Kelly's loan expiring, Chia being released, and also Walker retiring. We do have young Noah Carr. However, I don't feel he's ready to be playing every week in the National League. So it will be a priority to get at least a couple of defensive midfielders in for the upcoming season. Moving on to the wingers, starting with the attacking midfield right position. We do have Miro Pais, who I'm quite happy to continue as our starting right winger. However, with the loan expiry of Jones, we will need to bring somebody in just to provide some backup for him for when he gets tired throughout the season. After our successful end to the season using the 4-2-3-1 formation, we will start the current season with the same formation. So with Fraser Harper being our only attacking midfield option at the moment, we will need to go out and get a backup just so we can rotate throughout the season. As you can see, we desperately need a left winger in the team. We do have Owen Farmer who can play there. However, I'm unsure yet whether he will be our starting striker. And with Tim Berridge leaving the club at the end of his contract and Gordon leaving at the end of his loan, we will need to bring in a left winger or two for the upcoming season. Finally, a look at our striker role. I am quite happy with what we've got up front. Owen Farmer and Martin Friday will rotate throughout the season, playing this 4-2-3-1 formation. Kieran O'Brien, the youngster, looks like he's going to be a very good player in the future, so he'll get eventual game time as well throughout the season. However, I am a bit concerned if we do decide to go back to a 4-2-4 formation and play with two strikers up top, whether or not we maybe do need to bring somebody in. But I'll look at that as the pre-season goes on. But to start with our 4-2-3-1 formation, I am happy with the strikers that we do have. I will keep you updated on any transfers that happen throughout the pre-season. But before we end the video, we will take a look at our fixtures, which have been announced. We do have 5 friendly matches, including an away fixture against Quorn, who we've just created a link with. But we will start our pre-season with a home game at Hungerford before starting our National League campaign away at Southend. We have also been drawn in Group B of the National League Cup, where we'll play 4 fixtures against Chelsea reserves, Everton reserves, Sheffield United reserves, and finally Tottenham Hotspur reserves. The board aren't expecting much from us in this competition. They just want us to avoid finishing bottom. So we'll see how we get on with that as the season progresses. Thank you for watching Season 1 of Started at the Bottom, and I look forward to seeing you in Season 2 on the next episode as we begin our campaign in the National League.